I'm going to talk about one of my own poems today from a long time ago, about 14, 15 years. It's that period that I talked about before when I was engaged in just writing a lot of poems on a weekly basis, or on a weekly basis, and I was producing a lot. Didn't really have a lot to say at that time, and many of the poems had a kind of intellectual thrust to them. I think this was no exception, really. I had to write a poem, and I wrote this one. It's kind of densely philosophical, really, with a topical subject, which is about how perhaps science is kind of catching up with religion, and in time it will be religion that actually tells us if there is any creative design behind the universe. Is it just all there by chance, or is there some kind of directing power behind it, which is intelligent and self-conscious? Are we a part of that? So, yeah, I think it's fairly topical with the recent experiments which have been happening with Higgs boson and the God particle and things like this. Yeah, the idea that maybe it's science that will tell us about the origins of the universe, and we can finally find out about whether there is intelligent design in it from science eventually, rather than from religion. So the poem is called The Next Creation, and it's written in iambic pentameter. I think it's four stanzas of iambic pentameter lines rhyming A, B, A, B throughout. So it's a fairly traditional, or a very traditional structure to the poem, and that gives the chance to deliberate and contemplate, meditate, ask questions in a sort of relaxed way. So you don't want your format, your structure to be too tight when you're going to be asking a lot of questions and speculating about possibilities. You want to feel comfortable, and iambic pentameter is very comfortable, really. So the next creation, the idea is about how scientists believe or believed that there is a present creation created after the Big Bang, and that the Big Bang will eventually collapse in on itself, and it will disappear into a kind of microspace, and that's really what is behind this poem. So let me read it first of all. The next creation. A million times more massive than the sun, those stars that lit the early vacant space. Will mathematics yet deduce the one who shaped the cosmos and the human race? Religions still relate their ancient tales of Adam, Eve, the Ark, and other signs. But finally the telescope unveils the truth of God's intelligent designs. And were you there when the Big Bang blew out from tiny atoms crunched within a ball? And can you really have the slightest doubt that the Creator's plan includes us all? Someday the whirling atoms will collapse into the darkness of some micro space. And in that moment, God will think, perhaps, of something higher than your smiling face. Alright, so I gave some general idea of what the poem was about before. Maybe you should go through it stanza by stanza and see specifically what is being looked at in each stanza. The first one, 1,000,000 times more massive than the sun, those stars that lit the early vacant space. Yeah, I remember reading an article that said that in the early days of the universe, after the Big Bang, the stars that existed were so much bigger than the stars that are around now. There were fewer, of course, but they were absolutely huge at that time. And then I asked the question, will mathematics yet deduce the one who shaped the cosmos and the human race? So that's going back to what I said before. Maybe it's not religions that will provide proof of God or some intelligent design behind the human race and behind the universe, but it will be mathematics and science that eventually prove it. Obviously, there is a particular point of view here. There is a belief that probably there is something to find out, and that there is intelligent design. But anyway, there is no proof until perhaps science can provide it. The second stanza, religions still relate to their ancient tales of Adam, Eve, the Ark, and other signs. But finally, the telescope unveils the truth of God's intelligent designs. So, nothing very novel, really, in the ideas. Many people have said for centuries and millennia that the universe is just seems to be structured in too perfect a way to have happened by chance. It's an interesting point. These days, there is a new idea that wasn't perhaps around 14 or 15 years ago, that what happened on Earth was just an outlier that never happened anywhere else. When they go through the possibilities of life developing, it's almost always almost an impossible case. However, we know that for the Earth, it really did happen, but there were so many points at which things might have gone in a different direction, and it didn't happen. So now many scientists are coming round to the idea that life on Earth is really an outlier that never happened anywhere else. It's just something that was almost impossible, or is almost impossible, but it happened on Earth, and so and so we think that it must have happened elsewhere too, but it didn't. In fact, it's just one outlier. There is only life here and nowhere else. So that's another possibility, which perhaps wasn't around 14 or 15 years ago. So I say, religions still relate their ancient tales of Adam, Eve, the Ark, and other signs. But finally, the telescope unveils the truth of God's intelligent designs. So, if there is higher intelligence, a God, a directing force, it will be the telescope, it will be science, it will be mathematics, it seems, that reveals the plan to us very slowly. The next stanza becomes kind of personal. It's been totally abstract, philosophical until now, and suddenly something personal comes in. That probably should be the case with a poem. And were you there when the Big Bang blew out from tiny atoms crunched within a ball? And can you really have the slightest doubt that the Creator's plan includes us all. So whoever the writer is, well, me in this case, but the question is really being asked, is everything at the beginning, when the universe is created, is everything known? Is everything destined? Is everything planned? So if that is true, then every human being is the potential for that human being, or the inevitability of that human being is there from the very beginning. When the Big Bang blew out, from that moment, the certainty of all the people we know existing and ourselves is there. We might not exist yet, but we will exist in the future. So that's the question. That's the point that's being made. And were you there when the Big Bang blew out from tiny atoms crunched within a ball? The writer would probably say yes. And can you really have the slightest doubt that the Creator's plan includes us all? So if that is true, and everything was predestined from the time that the universe was created, then yeah, we cannot have any doubt that we have significance and importance within it. The last stanza: someday the whirling atoms will collapse into the darkness of some microspace, and in that moment God will think, perhaps, of something higher than your smiling face. So it refers to the cosmological model of the Big Bang eventually collapsing into a microspace, and that the whole sequence will eventually repeat itself. And yeah, the attempt to try and think of why that happens, or why it might happen, why it would or should happen, and just there is perhaps the idea here that maybe the creating force is just getting better all the time, and what happened last time, or trying to get better all the time, and so that could explain why it happens time and time again. However, there is a question asked, will God or the creating force be able to think of anything better than your smiling face for the next time he or she creates the universe? So it's back to that idea that we are all, if maybe we are all predestined to exist from the time that the Big Bang blew out. And if so, many of us maybe have in our minds a smiling face that we think could never be surpassed or equaled in a future creation, which a higher intelligence will form. So there is that sadness that everything, we are predestined to exist, but also predestined to die and disappear too. And the question is asked, will the creative force, will God be able to think of anything better than the people who are close to us, the people who we love? But then unsaid is the idea that all this is really beyond our minds. God moves in mysterious ways, His wonders to perform. So we can't really grasp the reasons why the creative force would do these things, but perhaps they have a reason. So that's the poem, The Next Creation, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.